Good afternoon, everybody. We're joining you here from the studio. We want to assure you we're all following the public health safety protocols. Before we start, it's really important that we acknowledge land and language. So I'd like to start by acknowledging with respect the Lekwungen peoples on whose traditional territories the university stands, and the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Wasanich people whose historical relationships with the land continue to today. I'd like to also personally pay my respects to elders past and present and pledge to walk on the path to reconciliation together. So today we've got a great program. We're going to look at COVID-19 and its impact on the university and what our plans are. We're also going to look at the budget and how we can demystify the process of the budget. A little bit of housekeeping to start with. First of all, captioning is available. Click on the closed captioning icon at the bottom of the screen, and thanks to Kaylee, who is our captionist today from the Island Deaf and Hard of Hearing. We're recording this webinar for members of our community who can't attend this webinar at this point in time. The question and answer function is turned off, but if you do have any questions, technical problems, you can contact one of the people via the chat who will help you sort out your problems. We're going to use Slido today, and soon you'll see a slide come up. So Slido is a polling program that we're going to use to gauge your opinions and your perceptions on some of the questions today. Slido itself is best if you take out a separate device like your phone. You can click on the QR code, or you can go to slido.com. The event code is UVIC, all undercase letters. If you don't have access to a mobile phone, you can also open up another tab on your computer, and you can get access to the questions. We've got 5 or 6 poll questions we'll go through today. And so hopefully everybody's going onto Slido at this point in time, or clicking your camera on the QR code will give you a little bit of time to do that. And then we're going to roll into a test question to make sure that our system's working okay. So let's put the test question up, and we'll give people a chance to slide into Slido. And the answers are coming really quickly. So which new or existing hobbies have you been enjoying during the pandemic? And so really interesting. Cooking's coming up top. Yes. That's something I must say I don't personally do, but all of you that do cooking, I'd be happy to meet you at some point in time.
I've been doing a lot of hiking and baking. One counteracts the other.
Yeah, exactly. Baking works for me too. I've been doing more baking than I've ever done before.
Reading, a great time to read.
Yeah.
Dog walking.
Interesting, nobody's put Zooming.
I think that's the enjoy piece.
I think so too. I think so too.
Yoga, UVIC comes up there, starting to come up.
I actually tried yoga for the first time over the last year. I enjoyed it more than I expected.
There you go. Good for you.
Gardening's interesting, particularly given the recent snow. My first snowfall, by the way, in Victoria was really exciting, and also my first university closure. Who would have thought in my first 16 weeks?
I saw sock monkey making. That wasn't something I anticipated seeing.
Lots of hiking, fantastic place to hike. Sleeping, I like that one too.
I have some friends who've taken up knitting, so I'm seeing that come up here as well. It looks like that's something some others have done.
And fantastic, we've got 320 people clicked in already. So it looks like this is working for most of you. Again, if you have any technical issues, just post a question in the chat. Hopefully this all works.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I'm surprised that Netflix is not bigger. But anyway, sorry.
Netflix is kind of like Zoom with somebody else on it.
I suppose.
Yeah. All right, well, I think we'll start moving on in the program. You can continue to fill that out if you want. Hello, Valerie. Hello, Kristi.
Hello.
And welcome to this town hall. I think it's going to be a really exciting event today. What I do want to do is just start off with a few remarks. And first of all, just to reiterate the importance of wellness during this pandemic, and that you really make sure that you take time to get some rest, you take time to take it easy. And from the university's perspective, we absolutely appreciate all of the hard work that everybody's been doing through this pandemic. You know, it's an uncertainty on a week-to-week basis. We just don't know how these things are unfolding, and I think the UVic community has gone above and beyond the call of duty. All of us have really pitched in, rolled up our sleeves to work. But the key behind all this is making sure our students, who are really the core of our business, are happy, trying to give them the best experience they can at a university. The town hall format that we're going to use today, I think, is one that was popular just before the holidays, where we had 800 people at the first town hall. We're going to have a slightly different way of doing it today. We're going to have an interview style session with the provost and the vice president, finance and operations, intermingled with a couple of Slido polls to gauge your sense around a few issues. We're going to share information about COVID-19, its impact it's had on campus, how we see it moving forward, and what our plans are for teaching and for delivering that experience to the students. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the UVic budget process. If you like, we're going to try to look at areas of investment and really demystify the process. I think most of this is for me. Being new to the university, I've been at 4 universities with 4 totally different budget processes. And I must say, nobody likes any of them at all 4 universities. But I think the key is really understanding the budget process, why it is, and how we make the decisions around prioritization. So that should be exciting today. We've received about 100 questions in advance of this. You've been kind enough to write in questions. And we don't have enough time to answer all the questions. We'd be here till 9 o'clock tonight. We'd all be zoomed out. But what we did is we categorized the questions into generalized buckets. And it's amazing how many things came up that were very similar. And so we'll identify those major themes during the course of this town hall. So I'm entering my 16th week as the president at the University of Victoria, and it's been just a fantastic experience to date. I'm really missing the personal contact that we can't have because of COVID. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm really thrilled to meet as many people as I can via Zoom or in some cases in person. I'm in the midst of what's been called my listening tour, and I've really enjoyed listening to you, to the faculty and staff, telling me about what makes UVic special to you, telling me what you envision for the future of UVic, where you think this university should go over the next 3, 5, and 10 years. It's been just a fantastic opportunity with a lot of commonality. My staff, who keep track of what I do to the minute, tell me I've met with 1,200 people in 90 meetings. 55 of those have been internal, 35 of those have been external. And this has been meetings with staff and faculty, students, alumni, and also with all 3 levels of government, business and industry in the greater Victoria area. And the one thing I'm learning is everybody has a really deep appreciation for the value that the university brings to the region and for the quality of the education that we deliver to our students. So that's a fantastic thing to learn. I thought I would go over a couple of the themes that I'm hearing from the listening tour. First of all, the fact that truth, respect, and reconciliation has to be a big part of everything we do as an institution. And I hope that most of you were very supportive of the announcement yesterday of the creation of the Associate Vice President Indigenous, Robina Thomas being put into that position as the inaugural Associate Vice President. Equity, diversity, inclusivity, and anti-racism always rise to the top again. And I think, again, as an institution, it has to permeate everything we do as a business. And I would say stay tuned. In the next 2 or 3 weeks, you'll be hearing a number of exciting actions and initiatives that will be going on in the equity, diversity, and inclusivity space. Climate and sustainability remains a top priority for most of you at UVic, and we will continue to be research leaders across the country in those areas. And I think we'll actually agree to live the life of being sustainable. And I think if we look at the operations that go on at this university, again, in my comparison to the previous 3 universities I've worked at, we are absolutely exemplars, and we want to stay in that position as the leading university in this country, trying to drive actions around climate and sustainability. Research is important to all of you. I'm told that whether I meet with individuals or with faculties, and we're trying to figure out how we can put more research support in place, how we can provide mentorship and career advice to our early career researchers, how we can look at things like graduate student support, measuring non-traditional research outputs and making sure that we value those as much as we do the traditional outputs. There's a lot of interest in supporting new research initiatives, seed funding, if you like, to try some ideas. And so we're going to look at how we can put some support behind those concepts and ideas. I've heard a lot about our international reputation, our collaborations, how important they are to the institution, and how they're also used to help drive the rankings. So we'll be really focusing on trying to build high quality global partnerships that will have an impact on our research enterprise, on the students we attract, and also on our connectivity with our alumni. And the other thing that's been really important to me my whole life, and I'm hearing it from the community, is the piece around access to education and supporting student retention. In Canada, there's still less than 40% of the population lucky enough to go to a university, and we're trying to look at ways we can get more of the population to attend university, maybe not in a traditional format, leaving high school directly, but perhaps coming in as mature students later in life. And so we're working hard on that. The listening tour is all about connecting with you, listening to your vision for the university, and that'll continue for the next few months. And at the end of the tour, I'll share what I've learned with the community via a town hall message. In the meantime, if you've got an idea you want to share with me, there's a president's suggestion box. If you go to uvic.ca/suggestions, we're open to any kinds of suggestions that you have for the university, how to make this a better place to work, a better place to study, and a more significant player in the community. And those are things that universities should aspire to. We're doing a fantastic job, but your suggestions are always welcome. So we're going to turn now to our first topic in the agenda. That's the COVID-19, the pandemic that's really gripped us all for almost a year now. Who would have thought last March when we were going through our first closure that we'd still be talking about it like we are? And I think the only thing, as I mentioned earlier, that's certain about the pandemic is the uncertainty that it brings. It's really hard for us to try to plan what's going on. And so we thought we'd have a good conversation around how the impact of the university is and where we're going from here. Again, I wanted to acknowledge all the work that you've all been doing to try to make this a great environment for our students to be and for make sure our core business moves forward. The themes that came in from the pre-submitted questions were based around campus life, the working arrangements, around vaccinations in the university, academic planning, and of course, travel. And so we're going to start by diving into a poll just to have a sense of how COVID is affecting you. So our poll is, what is the one thing you miss most about campus life? And this will be done as the previous one in a word cloud answer. So interesting, people coming up front, which isn't surprising. Yeah. It's that human contact, the day-to-day working with your colleagues.
Well, all the ones in the center are all connected to people.
They are.
Different language, but same sentiment.
Exactly.
Co-workers, students,
colleagues. Yeah.
Oh, I see Mystic Vale. People can still do. You can come to campus and walk through Mystic Vale.
Yeah,
that's exactly come to work necessarily.
That's right.
But it is incredible. It's all about people.
It
At
is
the end of the
all
day,
about
isn't it?
people.
The university
It's
campus
true.
is about the people that are here.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I think that says a lot about the value of a community like a university.
Yeah, absolutely. And I reflect back to to my first town hall. One of the things I asked you to do was to identify what's so important about UVic, and it was actually people. Collegiality was the number one. Community, the sense of community, and that's coming up clear again.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Thanks everybody for participating in that poll. We're going to move on to the question and answer, and I'm going to start off really by asking Valerie and Kristi a question around the people. And people have been on campus for about 10 months at all. And so in your words, can you describe what the campus looks like? So Valerie, over to you.
For sure. And I'm recollecting the Slido poll that we just saw. I think it reflects exactly what I'm about to say. Campus is quiet. And for those of you who haven't been on campus terribly much over the last number of months, it is a relatively quiet place. On a sunny day when we don't have snow on the ground, we can sometimes hear music students practicing on campus, and that's always a delight. That reminds me that we still have students on campus, and in fact we do. We have about 3,500 students on campus taking face-to-face classes. Our offices are, they're not fully staffed, and so we probably on any given day have about 20% of our staff on campus. I do encourage you all to visit campus because you can do that safely. You can take that walk through Mystic Vale that we saw up on the slide just a minute ago, and you can walk through Finity Gardens. What you can do is make a time to visit Carsa. You can visit the Mod for some food, or you can go to the general store in Mystic Market. I know they'd appreciate your business. The bookstore is available as well. And you can also, and I've seen community members walk to campus to do this. When I've toured Ring Road, I go on a walk every now and then. You can check out the construction site for the new housing and dining project. It's making remarkable progress. So if you haven't seen it in a number of months or even weeks, I think you'd be surprised to see the level of progress that is happening there. And when the snow clears, I'll just end by saying there are flowers blooming. So please come to campus to check that out. That's actually hope-giving and spring providing. So I encourage you to come and check some of those things out. They can be done very safely and are welcome.
Yeah.
Well, Kristi, did you want to add?
Well, just to add on the student housing, a colleague shared a picture last week because they're now up to the 3rd level, and apparently has amazing views of the ocean already at the 3rd level. So we can't wait to see what it's going to look like at a higher level. But the campus, we're following all the safe work protocols. We've developed, I understand, over 600 safe work plans, which is just amazing. There's directional signage everywhere. So it'll feel very much like when you go to your grocery store, you see the dots everywhere, you see signage and arrows. And you'll see in the room here, I think, check marks. The first time I went to a meeting when I came back, I felt a little bit like I was in kindergarten because you walked into a room and there's a table and there's X's and check marks and you're allowed to sit here and not allowed to sit there, which is pretty interesting. One of the unique things we have on campus, though, is the Classroom Ambassador program this year, and that's a new role. People who are helping students find their way safely between classes, keeping socially distanced, as well as wiping the classrooms down between visits. And if you haven't been to campus, a plug to get your free mask. You bring your one card and you get your first one free. So.
Fantastic. So we're going to move next to the number one question that was asked by all of you out of the 100+ questions that we got. And that's basically, what's the plan for faculty and staff coming back to campus? Will employees be able to work remotely once the pandemic is over? Kristi, let's start off with you.
Well, I first want to thank people. There's a number of people who have continued to be on campus throughout COVID, and I just wanted to first acknowledge those teams. We have teams in Carsa, within student housing and food services, as you mentioned, because they're open. It's really important that we've had those services to support our students, our 3,500 students who are on campus, to maintain those. So I want to acknowledge them. Also our campus security and housing, I think I mentioned. And our facilities management, the janitorial, of course, are continuing to be here to keep our buildings safe and clean. We've developed, as I mentioned, a number of safe work plans, and that combined with the provincial vaccination program will position us well to gradually move to more face-to-face over the summer and fall. And our goal is to get back our academic and our ancillary and our administrative services to face-to-face, full face-to-face or in person over the next 8 to 10 months. We're currently planning for the fall, and once we have more information on the fall, that'll become available to leaders through our COVID site to help give you guidance on helping to try and manage that transition. A core part of that will continue to be social distancing as we ramp in and move up our numbers on campus. We'll continue to do that. And in terms of your question about remote working, because I think that was one of the top ones we got, I'm amazed at when I reflect back on our transition last fall. If anybody had said to me that we could do it as quickly as we did, as effectively as we did, I'm not sure I would have believed them. I find it amazing. But we know that working remotely works well in some areas and for some people, and not as well in others. And with that in mind, our HR team is working with leaders on campus to work on what some remote working principles might be after the pandemic is over. So stay tuned for more on that.
Great. Valerie, any reflections?
Yeah, I just want to echo some of what Kristi said and acknowledge that for people who've worked remotely for a long time or for long periods, there can be feelings of isolation or feelings like an emotional toll that it takes. And so I think as we move toward returning to campus, it will be really important for us to think about how we rebuild a sense of community on our campus. You mentioned earlier, Kevin, that people were providing suggestions and they could send one into the suggestion box. Well, I received one about the importance of rebuilding interpersonal relationships amongst our community. All the people that sent in their message that they miss people. I think we needed to think about some intentional events or opportunities to rebuild our interpersonal relationships. And that was a suggestion of a faculty member that I'm thinking about, and I know others are thinking about as well. So keep the good ideas coming, because I think we need to work on that as we move toward coming back as a community.
Yeah, and tremendous suggestion. So somebody just mentioned vaccinations, and then this is a topic that you keep hearing on the news every day. There isn't an hour goes by that you don't hear something about vaccines, whether we've done a good job, whether we've bundled it as a country. But it is something that's going to have an impact on us as a community. And I guess a lot of questions came in around the vaccinations and what's the impact of the vaccination program on the university? And people are wondering, do we have a role to play in the vaccination program?
So it's really clear that the program and the rollout and how it's staged is a public health office, provincial government directive responsibility. So we don't have a role to play in that specifically. And we do understand, though, from looking at the information from the province that through July, August, and September, that our BC students and our faculty and staff will have access to a vaccination during that period. And as well, if we look at the demographics, and this is where it's good to be older, often get to say that, most of our faculty and staff will have at least one jab, as the Brits call it, before the end of August. We are the one role that we do have is we're working right now with Island Health to have a vaccination clinic on campus, and that'll be very much like for those who've been to flu clinics in the past, although I think it'll be like a flu clinic on steroids. I heard this morning about the number of people they expect to process, 360 people an hour. And it's going to be phenomenal in terms of seeing the logistics and the production of it. But that will be run by Island Health. But our community and the local community will have access and be able to come on campus. So that will increase the vibrancy a little bit, and we'll see more action on campus from that. One of the questions I think that also came through, Kevin, was whether vaccinations are mandatory and what's the outlook on that. And Provincial Health Authority, or officer, I should say, has been really clear that vaccinations are not mandatory, and that even is with respect to healthcare workers. That situations are different, will respect choice, and as a result, as a campus, it will not be mandatory to have vaccine to work here or to study here.
That's fantastic to clarify that, and really important information for us. Valerie, anything to add on the vaccination?
Just one point maybe that we have also heard unofficially, though, I think at this point, that out of province and international students will be eligible for vaccinations in BC. If they haven't been able to receive a vaccination in their home province or in their home country. We anticipate that might also mean then that if they have one vaccination and then need to travel, they could get the second one here. But that's unofficial information. We're still hoping that we can confirm that in the weeks ahead.
Fantastic.
And maybe I'll just add, because there'll be a mix of people with vaccinations or not, we'll be maintaining social distancing, and we'll be looking for the public health officer to let us know when we reach community immunity, which I always find hard to say. I think herd immunity has also been referred to before we start to relax.
Yes, fantastic. So maybe we'll switch a little bit now. There was a lot of interest in academic planning, and let's start with the summer for now. I know, Valerie, you and your team have been working incredibly hard, trying to anticipate multiple scenarios that may unravel as time goes on, which is a very difficult process. But perhaps you could let us know a little bit about the plans for programs and courses as we move into the summer term.
Absolutely, and I want to start by just thanking my team. I have an amazing team, and I'm very grateful for every one of them and the roles that they play in putting thinking together and planning these scenarios. Our decisions around summer are made as early as we can so people can plan. We're sticking to the regular timetable schedule, and that is 7 terms over the course of the summer, with about 6,500 students envisaged as participating in the summer. We looked to academic units to give us the best guidance on what should be taught and how. to deliver their programs and their courses. Couple of considerations though. One is, as Kristi was pointing out, physical distancing remains an issue. So we really aren't able to offer face-to-face instruction in the summer for groups of students in larger numbers than 50. So that's a big factor in planning for summer offerings. And also we recognize that there are very likely still to be travel restrictions. And so that also creates some challenges for planning for course delivery and for teaching and learning in the summer. Having said all of that, we have seen an increased interest in face-to-face offerings in some corners of campus. And we've also seen an increase in combination courses. And here I'm talking about courses that would include an online component or a remote learning component, but they would also include a face-to-face component potentially. And those combination courses are starting to emerge more frequently. I can say that for summer though, a lot of our programming will continue to be online, for some of the reasons I've just described.
Okay, well, we've talked about summer. Of course, the next big question, when we typically get our biggest intake of students,
Yeah.
what's the fall looking like? What's September looking
Your
like?
crystal ball.
Yeah, if I had a crystal ball. Well, if summer is a project, fall is a much bigger project. Because in fact, we're talking about 22,000 students, not 6,500 students. We're talking about many, many more courses and sections than we are in our summer offerings. And so planning for fall and consultation around fall with academic and unit leaders is underway as we speak. It's challenging, and it's challenging because the crystal ball is either too cloudy to be useful or doesn't exist whatsoever. We have unknowns around vaccination. We have unknowns around international travel. So we're developing some planning assumptions that will guide our planning, and we're developing some principles. And so we are trying to be both optimistic and realistic at the same time, if that is humanly possible. If I were to express a hope for the fall semester, it would be that public health provisions allow us to offer an in-person and face-to-face experience for all UVic students sometime in the fall. And so we need to continue to do our work to help that unfold with more clarity. And that work means that we're going to be working on timetable in the coming weeks, and that by the time the students register, which we expect to be in early June, we will have been able to announce course and program delivery modes so that everyone is clear on what is possible for September. We do expect, though, as we look ahead, to be back to normal, if you will, come January.
Okay. And Kristi, in terms of our operations, our facilities, the campus, what's it going to look like in the fall?
Absolutely. We'll have to dust off and update our safe work plans,
Absolutely.
as I mentioned, as we have more students on campus. But it's obviously going to impact our buildings and our cleaning, and so we'll have to be very thoughtful about, as we grow our student body, growing the associated services and the impact on our facilities as we go through it. But I know, to use your word, hope, it is very quiet on campus and feels eerie sometimes, and actually purposely go not only to support the mod and spend money there, but also to see students, because you don't get to see them very much. So my hope for the fall is that it's at least more vibrant than last year, though I know it will not be the same as years before that. But
Yeah.
remain hopeful.
Okay, let's look in that crystal ball again. One thing that's apparent is, of course, the way we deliver education has been constantly changing in response to COVID.
Yeah.
What do you think teaching and learning looks like, moving towards next year or perhaps in the future? Is it going to change?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's a question that we asked, Susan Lewis and I asked when we did our faculty council tour in the fall, because even then we were starting to envision what the future of our campus would look like and the future of instruction at all universities would look like. So the faculty council tour, we asked for suggestions from faculty members and instructors around this, and followed up with some discussions with deans as well at Dean's Council. I think we can say that UVic will continue to be a predominantly face-to-face institution, Kevin. I think that has been where we have created a mandate for ourselves that fits our campus and fits what we have to offer students best. Having said that, we have learned a lot during the pandemic. And again, we have heard from faculty, instructors, and students that online teaching and learning, some people actually really quite like. That the ways we do that work is well suited to some content, and it's well suited to some learning objectives. So if you were to ask me to predict into that crystal ball, I would expect that going forward, we would see more blended learning, more hybrid learning, whatever the new word will be. Those options that I talked a little bit about earlier that are combination options, perhaps. I think we will probably see more of that going forward. I do want to just mention something that is important for us all to remember. Changes to how we offer our programs and our courses and delivery modes. They're always initiated by our academic units, and so they come kind of ground up. They go through the faculties as well, but they're also the purview of Senate. So as we think long-term, any long-term and lasting changes we make to how we offer our programs will need to go through a bit of a process, and that process will include a Senate approval. So I think it's really important for us to realize these are not, the long-term decisions are not ones we make on a dime and simply just think short-term about. They need to go through academic collegial governance processes.
Yeah, that's a really important point. I think the other point is, of course, we learn from what we're doing during this COVID. And so we can take the best of what we learn and look at that in our long-term plans, but following the proper process. And Kristi, in terms of, crystal ball gazing for the campus in the future.
Well, I think we've invested a lot in technology over the last year, and as much as we make jokes about Zoom and Teams and other technologies that we've put in place, I don't think they're going to go away either. They're quite good productivity tools. I know my team, we use Teams all quite a bit, and it's quite nice to be able to send a quick chat to somebody when you want a quick answer. It seems more effective than email in some ways. So I think those types of things will continue. In terms of Valerie's comments and reflecting on the fact that our classrooms aren't set up as well to do some of those things right now. So we're really going to need to make investments in our classroom infrastructure, and we've got a team that's looking at that right now. So there will be some changes, I think, as a result of those decisions and where we think the future might go in terms of our campus infrastructure.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. Look, we're going to turn it back to you now. It's time for another Slido poll. We're really interested in your thoughts around what are you looking forward to doing the most? What course delivery mode opportunities are you most excited about? I'm getting ahead of myself here. Starting to see the answers come through. Slowly settling into a pattern here around multi-access, live streamed.
It seems to be a battle between mixed and multi-access, going back and forth.
Not much luck with big lectures delivered fully online. I guess that really gives you the perspective of the faculty and staff, and I think you probably hear the same from students.
Also, we do. Maybe that's an area in classroom infrastructure we don't need to focus on.
Yeah.
Giving this feedback.
Yeah, it looks like the multi-access is again very popular, and I think some institutions, perhaps some of our courses were delivered in this mode prior to the pandemic, and I think it's just really let us know that we can do this in a much larger scale.
Well, it's heartening to see, because this is the conversation with the group that's looking at classroom infrastructure right now is multi-access in the future. So
this is very helpful. Very interesting.
That's great. So we've got over 300 people responding. So you keep responding if you want. We're going to turn back to another question. One of the things that really attracted me to the University of Victoria was its reputation for experiential learning, for student co-ops and placements. And I'm just wondering, what's the impact of the pandemic been on our students that really love this experiential learning experience that we're well known for?
We've actually, maybe I'll jump in first, Kristi. We've had a very successful year for experiential learning. I'm thinking here especially of co-op placements, work study, even practicums as well. And we've also found that local communities have really stepped up. That has been helpful for our students because of travel restrictions that have been in place, right? So it's been really good that our local communities where students find themselves have been able to provide opportunities, experiential learning opportunities for students given restrictions on travel. Field schools are starting to pop back up. And so we're seeing, for example, requests for field schools to begin in the coming months. Of course, they need approval, they need safe work plans, and they need to all be operating within public health and UVic's guidelines. And so we're paying real close attention to whether and under what conditions those can be reignited. At this point, we've got no international programming that's planned for summer, field schools, exchanges, co-ops, that kind of thing. And they're unlikely at this point in fall, but we're back to the crystal ball. We are hoping that going forward in spring semester, we will be back in much more engaged form for students to use these opportunities to learn, because we know how important they are.
It's extremely important.
Yeah,
Kristi,
they are.
anything to add?
Oh, I'll just say, Valerie mentioned that we're having kind of a different approval process as we
Yes.
look at field schools. So this
Yeah.
next few months is an opportunity to test some of those tools and processes that we're putting in place for them, because there's not that many. So it gives us a good opportunity to do that.
Fantastic. So I think I'll stick to the script this time and read the right question. Well, it's time for another Slido poll. We're really interested this time in knowing what are you looking forward to doing the most once the restrictions are lifted, and we'll use a word cloud format for this. Travel, absolutely.
Hugs.
Mm.
Disney World.
It's fantastic. Travel and hugs.
Yeah, it looks that way.
Movies.
Yeah, live music.
Yeah,
Social
socializing.
gatherings.
Yes, exactly. Socializing in various forms.
I'm guessing with the snow right now, the travel is somewhere warm, probably people are thinking. Dinner parties. Even if we just get back to what was it before, our group of 6?
Yeah, our bubble.
Our bubble that we
yeah,
would allow some of
yeah.
these things to happen.
It's
like
true.
Dinner parties.
That's really interesting. You know, the same themes are staying at the top.
Yes,
As the
they
voting
are.
goes up, and they're not switching around. We've got travel, family, traveling, hugs.
Maybe traveling to see family.
Bit of partying up there, parties, dinner parties. That's fantastic.
Very connected to the poll we had earlier about what people miss about not being on campus. It's the people,
Absolutely,
right?
it's the people.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
even travel has elements of seeing people
Yes.
in
yeah,
addition to seeing family.
Yeah.
Friends.
Well, look, thanks for sharing that with us, UVic community. That's really, really great to get your feedback on that. We're going to switch for the last 10 or 15 minutes, and we're going to start dealing with some issues around the budget. And so, you know, budget's a really interesting process. As I mentioned earlier, 4 institutions I've worked at, 4 different processes. The one thing I will say about coming here and being here for 15 weeks is it's absolutely the most transparent budget process I've encountered at a university. Now, some of you in the community may not feel that way, but this is just my own personal opinion. From day one, I knew how our budget gets put together, and you know who makes how we collectively sit there and match budget asks up to the strategic framework. And we're going to get into some of the details of that. During the questions that you submitted, a number of things rose to the top with respect to budgets. One was around the process, the impacts of COVID-19, our areas of priority and growth. There's also some interest around student support and around graduate student funding. First off, I just wanted to really reiterate, we're so lucky to have a provincial government that has put education at the forefront during this pandemic. We've seen globally across the world, governments bailing on their commitments to higher education because they're in financial trouble with other issues associated with the pandemic. But I think the support we've got from the government from the time this pandemic hit has been fantastic, and I did want to point that out. We're going to get started with a skill testing question for you as the audience, because a lot of people don't know where we get our money from. So our first question is, what do you think is our biggest source of operating revenue at the institution? So this is money we use on a day-to-day basis to keep the lights on, to deliver our lectures, to undertake some of our research, but basically the supporting infrastructure that creates the university in an operational mode. And there we go. The bar chart's starting to work. Government grants coming in so far at the top. Tuition is another good guess.
Grant is growing and growing.
Sales and federal grants, I guess we all know that's a bit of a fallacy, so we're not seeing a lot of support there. The answers are coming in quick. Yeah, over 300 people now. That's fantastic. So it looks like most of you think that the BC government grant is the biggest source of our revenue. 60% of you, 30% of you going with tuition. 8% with federal grants.
Yeah.
So I think what we can do is let's put the slide on around the actual truth, and Kristi's going to guide us through what our budget revenues are.
Yeah, so good guess or education on your part. And I'm hopeful that that meant you came to previous budget presentations where we talked and we provided these slides. But you're right, provincial government grant is our top revenue source. But you'll see from this slide that tuition is quite a close second at 42%. And over this will be my 18th year actually, Kevin, that the proportion of government grant has declined and tuition has grown. And just to give it a little bit of color, within that tuition, about 60% of it is from our domestic students and about 40% for international.
Yeah. And so
good job.
Has that changed at all, do you know, over the last 18 years, the percentage of international domestic?
Both through the number of international students has grown, but also the tuition for international students has increased over that period, reflecting the full cost of programs.
Okay.
So yes, that's changed.
Valerie, I'm going to turn to you now. So I'm new here.
I think we just have one more slide.
I think there's an expenditure slide
So
for Kristi.
we're going to give
I'm going to let her do that one.
So I wanted to show this slide, and this is back to the theme of people. So this shows where we spend our money. So in terms of the total pool of money available to us, so almost 80% is spent on people, reflecting that we are a service institution, support students and the activities on campus. And then I'll just highlight the other big piece, which will actually probably be a bigger percentage this year, which is our scholarships and bursaries, an important part of our operating budget moving forward. So we just wanted to give information on both sides of the picture, both revenue and expenses.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay. Valerie.
My turn.
The budget process. We said it the first. I said it the first. It's a little bit about demystifying the process. Can you kind of step us through the process at the University of Victoria?
I'm happy to do that. The budget building process at UVic is both a top-down and a bottom-up process. Every summer and early fall, all academic and administrative units are invited to propose their priorities for the coming 1 year to 3 years. And that includes financial priorities, but other priorities as well. Their requests or their priorities are informed by data from planning tools, and they're always provided to us in the context of institutional plans. And so by that, I mean the strategic framework or our strategic research plan, our Indigenous plan, international plan, our strategic enrollment plan, and also our employment equity plan. Those are just examples. The priorities that are submitted from the bottom up, if you will, are reviewed by every vice president. And in VPAC, in the Vice President Academics Office, that means that I meet with each dean and each of my direct reports to review the priorities so that they can walk me through what's important to them. And that happens every year in the fall once they've established their priorities in each of their areas. The Integrated Planning Committee, which I chair, includes all the vice presidents and all senior leaders on campus. And later in that fall of every year, each vice president and the university secretary presents the priorities that they received from the bottom up, from their areas. We talk about those at the integrated planning table, and we look for ways to integrate the requests and the priorities across the institution, which makes sense given the mandate of our committee. At the integrated planning table, we also look at the priorities and commitments that we have as an institution to our institutional plans, the ones that I mentioned earlier. And we look at campus priorities for the coming year that will keep those commitments moving. So what priorities should we make, for example, to continue our commitments with respect to respect and reconciliation in the strategic framework? And we have conversations about those at the integrated planning table. That, if you will, is the top-down part. So the unit priorities come together with the institutional priorities, and what emerges from that is a sense of priorities that we see across the university. And we usually align those by theme. We align them by the strategic framework because that guides our entire institution. And we combine the top down and the bottom up, and that results in part one of what's called the planning and budget framework. We take that part one, it's written in words and it's written in my office, and we review it with Executive Council, we review it with you, Kevin, as president, we review it with the Senate Committee on the university budget every year, and then we ultimately take it to the board in January, and the board has the opportunity to give us feedback. And then the process, after we've received all that feedback, moves to mapping the available budget, the available resources that we have, onto the priorities that were developed in part one. And that is part two of the planning and budget framework. And that is led by the Vice President of Finance and Operations Office. That budget model, or the part two, is reviewed again by the President, by Executive Council, by the Senate Committee on University Budget, and by then the board for the approval at the end of March, which taken together, part one plus part two, equals the university's annual budget every year. And basically, that is the process. I'll make a final comment, and that is that the model that we use here actually balances stability in planning, which is the institution-wide view that is provided by integrated planning and our institutional plans and the commitments that are in them. So it balances the stability of that with opportunities for strategic and timely investments that can come up through, and in fact do come up through, the units and the faculties each and every year through the process that we begin with deans and all leaders on campus every summer. So following approval by the President and the board in March, just to tie the loose end and what happens at the end, the planning and budget framework is then posted on the financial planning website, and units then also hear back on the requests that they made to their vice presidents or to the university secretary in the course of the process earlier on. I should say you can go to the financial planning website and see it anytime. Hey, Kristi, it makes for fabulous reading.
Absolutely.
It's
a must-read document.
It is a must-read document. It's a great way to see what the direction of the university is and how we're making progress on accomplishing not only our institutional objectives, which is the purpose of all these institutional plans that we have, but also how units can find themselves in the priorities that have been established for our campus in the coming 1 to 3 years. I'll stop there. That was a Coles Notes version.
That's very clear to me now. Kristi, anything to add?
Well, I'll just add, I always think of Valerie's team as the words and the priorities, and our team is to provide the numbers and supports to it. But that budget and planning framework document, I was only half joking when I said it's a must read. It gives you a really good sense of the institution and where our funds are allocated. And it's more than just the operating budget. Our ancillary budgets are in there. So you get a really good sense of the operations and the scope and impact of each of those across the campus. So when you get a chance, it would be good for people to take a look at it.
Yeah, fantastic. Make sure you all look that website up and look at that document. There's been a lot of concern, I guess, in some of the questions we got and talking to people around campus around the impacts of COVID-19, both on our student enrollments and that rolls out into our revenue that's coming into the institution. What's your kind of early reflections on the impacts of COVID on our financial stability?
Yeah, so the short message, and then I'll give a longer one, is that we are in good financial shape. I know there's probably people who are worried. They've been reading about Laurentian and some of the other institutions that are struggling out there. So overall, UVic is in good financial shape. We're on solid footing. We come from solid footing, and we're actually having a solid year, which is a bit unexpected given where the year started. So we, following Valerie's description of the budget process, we went to the board in March and got a budget approved, and then promptly needed to start to develop a new budget for last year or this current year because life had changed dramatically. And so we were concerned about what our enrollment levels might be. So we developed a number of scenarios institutionally, projecting out what the impacts for those might be. What was really important when we developed the financial plan for this year, we really took the approach that as an institution, we had a potential financial gap to get through. We are not changing our strategic direction. We are not redoing our budget. And so the approaches that we wanted to take this year needed to reflect that. So we didn't do things like across the board cuts. Some of that is because the province continued to support us. So we took one-time measures. People will remember that we delayed hiring. I got lots of emails from lots of people during that process saying, I really need to hire my person, but we did that to manage our expenses. But the other big piece that we did, and everybody contributed to that, so thank people for it, is we accessed people's carry forward. So we contributed from the center, but we also asked faculty and all our administrative areas to provide funding in order that we could continue to support not only our strategic direction, but most importantly over the last year, make investments in health and safety, in supporting our students in need through scholarships and bursaries, supporting faculty in the classroom. So that process allowed us to continue to make those investments and continue with our strategic direction. In terms of the enrollment this year, we are pleased that actually, as much as we thought it might be down because we were unsure how students would feel about online learning and whether they'd persist through the year, we're actually year over year up slightly. Domestic is overall up, international is down a bit, and so is grad, but overall we're up. As much as the operating budget is in a good place, COVID has impacted the campus disproportionately. I mentioned ancillary services before. Our ancillary colleagues have had a really tough year. They are quite dependent on face-to-face in terms of their revenue generation, and so these are our athletics and recreation, housing, food services, continuing studies, etc. So they're projected to have significant financial shortfalls this year, over 10 million collectively. So it has really had a disproportionate impact on the campus. One of the things, though, that people may not understand is that government doesn't allow us in any one year to have more expenditures than revenue. If we do expect to have that, we need to ask permission, and this is one of the ways the province has been supportive in allowing institutions through this last year to have a deficit, if you will. And really what they're doing in saying that is allowing an institution to draw down on their carry forwards and reserves, which is the strategy that we undertook this year.
Right. Valerie, anything to add?
Just building on Kristi's point, I might just say that we've spent, I think since COVID began, Kristi, we've spent and invested nearly $18 million in COVID supports. I think that's the right figure. And I think that a slide is coming up to demonstrate where those resources have been invested. You'll see that the largest investment has gone to academic supports. And here, almost half of the money invested has gone to areas like our Division of Learning, Teaching, Support, and Innovation, for course design experts, accessibility experts, to the faculties for sessionals and for TAs, faculty mentoring programs, the classroom safety ambassadors. That's what, those are some examples of what comprise the academic supports area. The next largest one is student supports. And here we've got our new Student Connect program that was supported out of these investments. This year, we've actually invested more than $2.6 million more into student financial aid and scholarships than we have in previous years. And so that's an example of where we have invested more than what we would have in a normal year. Co-op students, academic advising, those are the types of supports that fall into that part of the chart. Systems and technologies is 13%, and here it's the kind of licensing and tools that we needed in the COVID period to meet our mandate, quite frankly. Licenses for Brightspace and for Zoom, Kaltura, Labster, internet bandwidth to make sure that we could actually do this kind of thing, but that instructors and faculty and students could talk to one another and learn and teach appropriately. And cleaning and safety, I think, is the last category. And here it's to support our janitorial mission and staff, and masks, sanitation products, the kind of thing that's necessary in order to survive as a campus safely in a COVID period. So that just gives a sense of where some of our investments over and above our normal budget have gone in the past year.
It just gives me an incredible sense of the effort and level of detail that goes into the budget planning process. And, you know, the fact that we're actually doing really well in a year like COVID is really heartening to me. I was 13,000 miles away when the pandemic hit on the other side of the world, and the higher education sector has been decimated by the pandemic in terms of 20 to 30% budget deficits. So it's fantastic to know. I'm also doing a lousy job as a host, and we're running out of time, so we won't get to the last question that we had. But I do want to leave with a couple of extra polls that we'll do one now, and then I'll make my closing remarks while we do the last poll. So if we can put the next Slido up. Of course, the university spends a lot of time thinking about its priorities and where it wants to make its investments over the next few years. And we were going to talk about that, but we've run out of time. We'd be really interested in hearing from you. What area would you most like to see UVic prioritize in the next 1 to 3 years?
It's good to see sustainability climate action plan. That's one of our goals, and a group is already starting to work on our new plan for that.
Yeah, it looks like there's some stability now on those bar graphs. After 250 people, we've got sustainability, equity, diversity, inclusion, anti-racism, student success, of course, being important, reconciliation initiatives, very close with all these initiatives. Connecting with community, getting some votes, reputation, research. Very common to the things I'm hearing as I go around and talk to people on campus.
And also very common with some of the priorities that I think people will see in the planning and budget framework when we get out the other side of the approval process.
Absolutely.
So these are priorities for us
fantastic.
as well.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, thanks for sending those priorities into us. We're just going to conclude now. First of all, huge thanks to Kristi and to Valerie. You know, very unusual format. The host was terrible, but I think it was good in delivering some information to the campus community. So thank you. And I would point out we're not paid or trained actors. So what you see is what you get. Thanks to all of you for attending today. It's fantastic to be able to connect via different mechanisms. I know you're all tired of Zoom, but we hope this provided you with a little entertainment and information today. And as we wrap up, I just want to thank the production team for putting this together. They've worked really, really hard to make us all look good. You know, so that's been fantastic. And we're going to leave on a poll. And I'm interested in future town halls. I think we all are as the leadership team at the university and providing information we can to you. So our last Slido poll is, what topic would you like to see most covered at a future campus update or town hall? We'll leave that with you. We'll say thank you to everybody. We'll say enjoy your afternoon. And again, once again, from all of us on the floor here, thanks for the extraordinary efforts you've all been putting into making this university continue to function as the best university in the country. So thanks to all of you, and thanks for answering these questions. And we look forward to seeing you all again.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.